It's going! It's still here. Get off me! Ha-ha! Nailed it! Sonic!
This game is bad, but you already knew that. But no one wants to make a terrible game. What led to this?
No! You think that those tanks are gonna keep me away? No! Let's rip!
To get the answers, we gotta go back in time. We've gotta induce a chaos control. Way back 200 years ago, after Sega's gangbusters success with their 2D games for Genesis, selling dozens of millions of copies, they broke onto the 3D scene with classic memorable games like Sonic's Schoolhouse.
Get ready for math.
And thank God for that game, because it inspired the guy who made Baldi's Basics in Education and Learning. But no, earlier 3D Sonics were games like 3D Blast, and there was even a canceled game developed from 94 to 97 called Sonic Extreme. The team behind it was using an engine that was developed by the original Sonic programmer, Yuji Naka, who was working on Nights into Dreams at the time. He noticed they were using his engine and he was like, yeah, Nah, y'all gotta stop that. I didn't approve that. And then by 1997, Extreme couldn't be finished in time, especially with the next big 3D Sonic game in the works right around the corner, which was Sonic Adventure. For the best console of all time, the Sega Dreamcast. This game featured much different gameplay from the 2D games, along with an overworld map, a story with voiced cutscenes, totally optional content, and 7 different playable character campaigns. It was a runaway success commercially, but many people still yearn for an experience closer to Sonic's classics. But Adventure's multi-campaign format would be the formula for the main Sonic entries for years to come. This is mostly because it was easier for Sonic Team to reuse already designed levels, just with different characters, because designing levels in 3D was taking much longer for them in a Sonic game where there are these large maps, as opposed to 2D maps from the Genesis games. Sonic Adventure 2 kept up with the multiple campaigns, but they put characters into teams this time. They still had an ongoing story that was basically like a cartoon storyline, but they removed the overworld map.
You thought you could trick me with that fake emerald, didn't you?
So, how did you know it wasn't the real one?
Tails! Because you just told me, Fox Boy.
Sonic Heroes eventually released in 2003 for Gen 6 platforms and PC. It followed the same formula with the multiple campaigns, and then it threw in new character mechanics. It was developed in just 20 months, and Sonic Team looked to get back to their 2D roots, so they put in a lot more fast-paced levels, loops, bumpers, a flashy aesthetic, etc, etc.
Sure!
So now we come up to 2004, the concept year for Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. But it's gotta be said that some of the issues coming up here didn't start with Sonic 06. A lot of the games we just mentioned had development woes. During Sonic Heroes development, 2 people were level designers for the entire game, including director and lead designer Takashi Iizuka. The other level designer became seriously ill, so Iizuka had to work non-stop, became an insomniac, and lost 22 pounds in the latter part of finishing every level alone, and says that he feels like he almost died as a result. During Sonic 3, they had planned for more maps than Sonic 2 that were also exponentially bigger. This increased the development time of Sonic 3, where there were already deadlines for release. Specifically, there was a promotional deal that Sega made with McDonald's.
Where do the stars of Sega Sonic 3 go when the game's over?
Sonic? Are you guys in there?
Hey, here's a hint. They're at McDonald's in the $1.99 Sonic 3 Hamburger Happy Meal.
At the same time, the team realized that the game they were making with the bigger maps was too big for Genesis cartridges. So the devs had to go to the Sega hardware team and come up with the stacking cartridge, which would allow them to release one part of the game, Sonic 3, and then finish up Sonic and Knuckles and then release that with a cartridge slot on top of it. It was a clever solution to their McDonald's deadline problem. Another example, during Sonic Adventure 2, Sega would announce that they were stopping hardware production. no Dreamcast 2. There were major layoffs at Sonic Team, reducing the team who was working on Sonic Adventure 2 from 120 to a skeleton crew of just 11. It was coronavirus levels of layoffs. Those 11 people finished Sonic Adventure 2, and the game released with major success, but not without a severe crunch from the team's expense. Also, not to mention, after Sega cancelled its plans for future consoles, Sonic's team would no longer have the benefit of working with the console's hardware team. Alright, back to 2004. With the 7th generation of consoles coming out soon, Sega reportedly struck a deal with Microsoft to have a new game out by holiday 2006, and that game would be a Sonic game. So development started in late 2004 on a game that Sega hoped would reinvigorate the franchise, simply named Sonic the Hedgehog. TM. They would hope to define a new era of Sonic games after Sonic Heroes and Shadow the Hedgehog were pretty bad. Series co-creator and programmer we mentioned before, Yuji Naka, states that they wanted to have a cinematic blockbuster vibe to this whole game. Kind of inspired by the comic book movies that were coming out around the time, like Spider-Man 2 and Batman Begins.
Nice coat. Thanks.
Nice smile.
They wanted a more realistic and slightly darker tone with the story, and would create a realistic aesthetic as well with the environments.
What just happened?
The Sonic crew would look a little bit taller, Eggman would be more of a dude, and Sonic's love interest would be a human princess. And Sonic fucking dies.
Sonic!
The Havoc engine was picked up for their physics engine to get full use of the power of the new consoles coming out, and they even designed a new character, Silver, around using the physics as a gameplay mechanic. And finally, they were planning to return to the Sonic Adventure format, having an overworld map, optional content, character upgrades, multiple campaigns and different playable characters in each campaign. Yuji Naka even stated in 2005 during Sonic 06's development that fans demanded this type of gameplay again, so they were aiming to deliver on that expectation. So this game was going to be the real deal, an updated Sonic Adventure. It was going to be a city full of upgrades and quests and a cinematic storyline and people fucking dying and Sonic banging princesses. It was a whole package.
Sonic! Sonic! Wait!
Elise, are you ready? I'm going right up the middle.
Okay,
Let's keep going. Hang on tight.
please take your time.
Oh? Is there a back road? Let's rip.
Woo!
Woohoo!
Sonic, I knew you would come. Are you tired?
Feels great, doesn't it?
Yes. I've never run so fast before.
But then, chaos ensued. In spring 2006, team leader Yuji Naka quit to form his own development studio called Prope. And he took 10 other members of Sonic Team in the process who were more than likely working on Sonic 06. Naka was one of the last original creators behind Sonic to leave the company, and according to former Sega of America CEO Tom Kalinske, the heart and soul of Sonic was now gone, along with the 11 people who just left. Around the exact same time as Yuji Naka leaving the company, the Nintendo Wii's hardware specs were announced and dev kits were sent out, and Sonic Team realized that the Wii wasn't powerful enough to handle Sonic 06 in its current state, and it would take too long to change the game to port it to the Wii. So, Sega split Sonic 06's dev team in two, one to continue work on Sonic 06, and another to start work on an entirely new game for the Wii, Sonic and the Secret Rings. This game would eventually come out just 3 months after Sonic 06 to kind of meet the same deadlines as a Sonic 06 Wii version, meaning they made this entire game in roughly 1 year, instead of keeping them on the big new Sonic game that was really important for Sega at the time. So Sonic Team had staff poached from them, and then they were split in two. Just like Sonic Adventure 2, in a short period of time they found themselves painfully understaffed, with an unchanged deadline. But unlike Sonic Adventure 2, they were working with new consoles and a new engine, and they didn't have the first-party support of a Sega hardware team. Also, there were reportedly many leadership changes since the departure of Yuji Naka, which probably led to more chaos in the studio. Chaos, uncontrol. So during the later part of development of Sonic 06, the quality assurance process was basically abandoned. Numerous problems were found during playtesting, bugs and glitches with the camera and controls, as well as performance issues that weren't optimized yet. These things weren't addressed because the core game wasn't even finished yet. The producer said about the end of development that they basically had no time to polish the game at all and were just churning out content as fast as possible. So the game was released, and people quickly saw all the problems in this game. First, you got the load screens. This is the first glaring issue of this goddamn game. You load into a city. You can't play a level yet because you have to do a side quest. You start the side quest, it loads. It finishes loading and the person says 1 or 2 lines of dialogue. It loads again. You finish the side quest in a very short amount of time. It loads again. The guy or girl says 1 line of dialogue, and then it loads again. This continues for the entire game. Not only that, just running around towns and talking to NPCs to figure out how to play a level in the game is a constant. The characters and writing are just laughable.
The one that defeats and seals you in the future is me.
Just as a flower comes from a seed, or a chicken comes from an egg, everything has an origin.
The camera gets stuck on objects in the environment. The camera has horizontal inversion with no option to change it. Enemies and bosses can stun lock you to death or kill you nearly instantly.
It's no use! Take! It's no use! This will end! No. Not now.
Then there are enemies and bosses that require long amounts of waiting and not going fast. A general lack of polish and just unfathomable amount of glitches in movement and mechanics. Numerous side quests that are boring as shit, but luckily they're optional. Just a nonsense story with bad time travel plot lines.
Because I have the power to travel through time.
No way!
No way!
Yes way!
The romance between Sonic and Elise was universally ridiculed, and the kiss at the end was the watershed moment that pivoted Sonic the Hedgehog to the ridiculous franchise it is today. To where people would start asking, poor Sonic, where did it all go wrong?
Sonic!
There was also kind of a weird Final Fantasy aesthetic and vibe to everything, with the end of the world time compression to the disaster fire planet to the falling princess shit. It's dumb. This game's dumb. It's so bad. There are some silver lining positives, you might say.
Are you kidding me?
The cinematics look amazing. The graphics look mostly fine, if nothing is happening. The soundtrack is great for the most part, with a few exceptions. Fun fact, Drake sampled the main theme of the game in his song KMT. Needless to say, the game was released to universally negative reviews, becoming a critical failure. The PC and Wii versions were cancelled, but the game still managed to sell nearly 900,000 copies in the first 6 months. It even qualified for an Xbox Platinum hit version, which really shows you the low bar for Xbox Platinum hits. 3 DLCs were released that added hard modes, a boss rush, and alternate character modes to the game. The hard mode made an already frustrating game to play even harder, so that's pretty special. In 2010, Sega started removing Sonic games from sale if the Metacritic scores were average or lower, saying that, and I quote, "We have to do this because it increases the value of the brand. This will be very important when more big Sonic releases arrive in the future." Ironically, this is the same year that Sonic Free Riders was released. And Sonic 06 was a big reason that in 2008, fans started calling Sega's new Sonic game process the Sonic Cycle, which consisted of getting hyped up for a new game, hoping for a return of the glory days of the classic games. The game releases and features gameplay with multiple characters with new gimmicky mechanics, and then the game getting middling reviews or worse, and then the cycle starts anew. In conclusion, there's some amount of charm to Sonic 06, to be honest.
Hey.
It tried something different for the franchise in a lot of different ways, and it was just kinda crippled by short deadlines. I'm not saying the story would be better, but maybe the gameplay would, and maybe some of the side quests wouldn't have sucked ass. They had a bunch of management changes, staffing issues, no quality assurance time. And you know what, since then, Sega's released a handful of new Sonic games, varying in quality, but Sonic 06 will forever be looked back on in awe. In awe of just how unpolished it is, but still having the scope and ambition of a huge cinematic and epic story. It's fun to think about how if Sonic Team had more time to breathe with the development cycle of this game, just how much better it could have been. But instead of getting the big reinvention of a classic franchise, we got nearly what was the room of video games. So that's it. Have you played Sonic 06? Do you like it? Tell me what you want to hear about next.